Now that I've completed the game, I'm going to be reviewing Atelier Lulua, the Scion of Arland. Atelier Lulua is part of the fourth installment of the popular Arland series. Not sure if popular is quite the word that I would use. Now, I initially started the whole entire Atelier series in the Arland series back on the PS Vita. However, I was not a big fan of it. In fact, a lot of people weren't a big fan of it, mostly due to the time constraints. They've since then changed that in this series. If you are new to the Atelier series because of Atelier Ryza, and you're curious about playing Lulua, then this could feel like going a step backwards. However, it does give you a good sense of how the previous Atelier games used to play, like back on the PS3 and Vita generations. You don't need to actually play the previous Arland series to get into Lulua. While it is the fourth installment to the Arland series, it doesn't have a strong connection to the previous games beyond certain alchemists that you get to see again and characters, maybe even some locations. To fans who used to play the previous games, it's a nice trip down memory lane. Now, if you're new to the series, like you've never played the games before, or if you're only been playing the game since Ryza, I'll point out a few things that are different from Ryza compared to this game. First up is the world map. Yes, you might be surprised that the world map is sort of like this top down view and you're kind of going from place to place. It's not so much like Final Fantasy 9 or 7, where you're kind of freely roaming around the map. It's sort of more like there's just different locations that you can go to, and you have to unlock your different locations. So you can't just freely roam around or anything like that. You have to unlock it, and then you can go to those places. You unlock certain parts of the map by either it's part of either the storyline or you're going to unlock it through the alchemy riddle. Now, the alchemy riddle, that's not exactly new to the series. They've kind of done that before. Usually with Atelier games, they've either done sort of like a tree branch kind of a thing or do a discovery on something or like a book or whatever. I personally kind of like it when it's more of a book just because I feel like it's a little bit more free roaming. So, just to explain the alchemy riddle, you have this book that you go through. They're all in different chapters. There's 11 chapters total. There's main storyline that will appear on the left side that you have to do. There's also the stuff that's on the top right that you need to complete. And then once you complete the stuff on the top right, you get access to more advanced stuff at the bottom. Here's what was really cool though is that it doesn't matter what chapter you're on. You could be on chapter 1 but complete part of the book that's in maybe chapter 5, or you can be on chapter 5 and complete something that was back in chapter 2. So it's pretty fluid like that. It's not like a sphere grid, to give you a better example. It's not like something that you follow in a line or that you need points to save up for and unlock certain things. You kind of need to make certain discoveries, like, I don't know, craft something of really high quality, or discover this new item, or beat a monster, or use something in order to unlock different parts of the book. So that was pretty cool. Again, it's not exactly too new, nor is it too different from the previous games. But if you've never played it before, that could be like a whole totally new concept. Another thing that you might notice on the world map is that so on the top left there's a not only something that you can see with the weather, but there's also like time is moving, days and months, things like that. Again, not exactly too new to the series. Now, before in the Arland series, and this is what some people just did not like about the Arland series, they didn't like the time constraints. So I thought it was pretty odd that they still put in days that would go by and months and even a weather system. Now, I guess they put this stuff in just because I didn't notice too many quests that was based around time or deadlines. However, there were certain items where if you went to them on the map, they would only appear during certain times of the month. One of them was like a flower that I actually still have never got because it was only around I believe the 10th month, or like I think it was like only available on the 10th month, or no, it was available around November. But yeah, I never knew what location it was in, and I never found the flower. Luckily, it was never required for the storyline. However, there was one item that was required, and I needed to get that item. It wasn't based off of any certain time, but it was based off the weather. Now, how the weather works is when you're in one of those maps, I guess the weather could just suddenly change from maybe foggy to rainy, thunderstorm, or sunny, things like that. My only issue with it personally, if I'm going to compare it to something like Sophie 2, where they had a whole weather implementation and you could just change the weather on the spot, my only issue with the weather system in this game was that I guess it didn't feel consistent, if that makes sense. Like, okay, I would understand if you said at 6 a.m. in this area it's going to be foggy. Or I could understand if you said maybe at midnight in this particular forest area it's going to be thunderstorms. And that would be fine. Or if you told me, hey, on the third month it's the rainy seasons or whatever, and it's gonna be raining a lot, mostly on the map. Cool. I actually would have been like okay with it if it was something that I could fairly predict, but it just felt kind of random. It just kind of felt like it rained when it felt like raining, or it was sunny when it was just sunny. And to hope that the weather was just gonna simply change when you needed to find something was kind of like, mm, I don't really have the patience to wait for the weather to change. I don't even know if the thing I'm looking for on this map is going to be based on the weather or which weather. You see what I'm saying? It's like it was just too much of an unpredictable thing to base it off of. It was cool that they implemented it. I don't hate the idea of it, but it was just not very well planned or executed, if that makes sense. I didn't really know what I was looking for based on the weather. Next up is battle systems. Now, battles are pretty much the same in every Atelier game, in my opinion. However, every time that they put out a new game, they usually just tweak it a little bit or they just introduce different concepts that just make it stand out a little bit more from one game to the next. In this game, Lulua, the thing that they introduced that was slightly different was interruptions. So the way that worked was only your alchemists were able to equip certain items, let's say a bomb or some sort of healing item or even like a buff. As time would like progress in the battle, your gauge would fill up and then you could use an interruption. This is actually pretty cool and pretty broken because once you got all three alchemists on your team, all three of you could do interruptions and you could just be, throwing bombs left and right. Towards endgame, I didn't do that. Towards endgame with those final bosses, I had to put on healing items. But again, it's pretty cool. Like you could be fighting and be able to do an interruption and maybe heal your party or even revive them depending on what you've equipped. Aside from interruptions, everything is pretty much the same with other previous like Atelier games. You're on a time card, you can stun them, they can stun you, things like that. Nothing too different. They've never really made battle systems that much different between all the Atelier games, in my opinion. Like I said, it's usually just one or two different improvements or tweaks just to make each one stand out from the other games. Crafting, of course, this is a big part of the game. Now, as someone who's a big fan of the Atelier games, I've seen crafting really evolve from Atelier Iris all the way to Ryza. And I've always seen it always progressively just getting more and more complicated. So it's kind of nice that now that the crafting is a little bit more simplified. Really the only thing I watch out for is to make sure I can get those boosted stats. Like if the element is fire or lightning or ice, then I try to get those boosted stats. I think a new thing that they did introduce, again, it's probably another Atelier series, but they had boosted items that way you could boost your stats when you're crafting. So that was a bit different. The only thing that I would say that I never understood why they got rid of it in Atelier games and now it's in this one was crafting multiple items at once. There's so much crafting in Atelier games that I have no idea why the option just to say make multiple items went away. But I'm glad that they brought that function back. Usually in like some of the newer games, I feel like you just had to keep remaking the same thing over and over again, or just make it of such a good quality that it made multiple ones. But sometimes I just wanted the option just to say, hey, can you just make more of an item? Now, to be fair, I guess some of the newer games they've introduced systems such as duplicate, so you could just make the item once and then duplicate it several times. They kind of have that here in this system where they said you can register an item and therefore you be able to buy it. I don't think they really did the duplicate so much, but to be honest with you, I really didn't need those options or those systems. I would just usually just make a new item or just say make multiple items. Now, there was a downside to making multiple items. You couldn't tweak the stats as much as you could by just making one item, if that makes sense. But beyond that, though, it was a very helpful tool to have just to be say, hey, I want to make multiples of this item. Doesn't even really matter what stats are on it. Just needs to be of like really good quality and go from there. So crafting is pretty simple, very easy to understand, and it's not overwhelming. Now, here's where things get a little funny for me in this game, and that is the main storyline and plot. Now, full warning, full disclosure, I am going to be revealing some major spoilers to the game. I'm not trying to spoil on purpose, but if you don't want spoilers, I highly recommend that you just skip this part right here. I am going to timestamp it and put like a warning. That way you know that you're in spoiler mode right now. So, what I probably did not like, and in general, most Atelier games don't have the best storylines. They usually wait like really towards the last minute to like kind of let you know like, oh, the world is in danger and you gotta save it and blah blah blah. And to be fair, storylines in Atelier games have been getting better since Ryza. However, in this game, and again, I did enjoy the dialogue. The story was cool. It's a very chilled game. What I didn't like was at the very, very end when you save Stia and you do the final boss, you go back and you find out that you have actually been in a parallel universe. That in a different world or in a different universe, you tried to save her before and failed. And this was not good enough for the main character. The main character was basically like, well, great that I saved her in this universe, but I want to go save her in the other universe as well too. And I won't tell you what happens after that, but my thing is this: if you're going to do this whole parallel universe thing, which I don't mind that, I just wish they would have leaned into that a little bit more. And what I mean by that is, I remember playing Atelier Ryza Iris, Iris 2 actually to be specific. And you can almost argue that that's how that game is as well. That there's I wouldn't say a parallel, there's not a parallel universe, there's just another world or another universe that your character goes to, Felt. And back at home, Vize, she's the alchemist and she is the one who's learning all these different recipes, crafting them, and she's able to send them to Felt through this book. You could almost look at it like an alchemy riddle. And so I kind of felt like they could have done something similar. I felt like they could have leaned into the whole, hey, there's a different universe where this person doesn't get saved and try and save her, not only in your world, but in hers as well, too. I don't know. I just felt like there could have been a better way to interact with that versus just literally, and I do mean literally, final boss, you fight him, and then you find out there's a parallel universe, and then you got to go back. Then you have to go to that parallel universe and do it again. I don't know. I just felt like that was kind of cheesy in my opinion. I was like, you could have maybe done that better. Same way how I felt like in Sophie 2, like, why make this whole world where you tell me that different people from different parts of the world are like getting sucked into this tree and we're all in together? I felt like that was a perfect opportunity to just bring back old characters from different parts of the game and have them in that world and in that universe. But instead, it was just like something completely different. And that's just kind of how I feel about this one, too. It's just like, why tell me at the last minute there's a parallel universe and why make me fight the boss twice? I don't know, it just seemed kind of cheesy, but that was me. That was just how I felt about it personally. Now that we're out of spoiler mode, I can say that though, that when you do beat the game, there is like New Game Plus, and it was really cool of the bonuses that they gave. Now, usually they give bonuses like maybe you can see still images from the cutscenes that you've unlocked. Not too many like I guess cutscenes or movies that you can rewatch, but there is that too. Another thing that I thought was really cool that they did though was the different characters that you play. They actually incorporated the voice actors' thoughts on like their production and how they felt about the character, and you can actually hear their voices too. And you can read it as well too. It was really interesting. I don't think I've ever seen them do that. I've seen them do things like give you images, soundtracks, but I've never really seen something where like you could read the voice actors and even people who were like just working in production, like even like the sound production people, like they had like their opinions and thoughts on it as well too. So that was really cool to unlock in the end. And I see this as a game where you can replay it if you want to, and just unlock more of these things and just really get a feel for like the production of this game. Like I said too, I was completely surprised that there was going to even be a fourth game, because usually Atelier games generally they come in sets of threes, and they haven't really revisited some of them until about recently with like Sophie 2, connecting that story. Now with Lulua, I was like, oh, cool. Like they're going back and they're connecting some of these stories. Because previously, the games, other than Ryza, usually these were very disconnected stories. Other than maybe Iris and possibly Manakemia, all the other ones were just these very loosely connected worlds, but they were very like all the stories were not connected. So it was really nice that they've done that this time around. Other than the weird storyline at the end, honestly, this has been a great game to play. It was sort of like a trip down memory lane for me. There were certain things I just kind of remembered. I was like, oh yeah, they did do the maps like this, and oh yeah, I kind of missed this about crafting a little bit. And oh, it's so nice that they just sort of simplified it. The battle systems were cool. Gathering stuff was cool. All of that was cool. Even the characters and some of the dialogue, it was great. It was an enjoyable game to experience, and I hope you guys get to experience this game as well too. If you want to check out more gameplay footage, you can see some of the live videos that I've done, and I hope you guys get to check it out, because I think the Atelier series is a cool series to experience, and this is just another one that I feel like, hey, they did a pretty good job. Until next time, guys, I'll see you later.
いいかしら。おい、師匠どうしました？何も言わずに、あたしと勝負してちょうだい。